You may have grown up with a similar version floating about your house, but when I was a kid, my mother would say to me, dude, well, she wouldn't call me dude, but she'd say, Georgie, focus more on your needs and less on your wants, and you may have a shot at a better life. And when I was a kid, I didn't really give that a lot of credence. In fact, I just chalked it up to the kind of rationalizing that you do when you're poor. If you don't have much and you don't have the prospects for much, let's just not focus on what you can't have. But the older I got, the more I realized that my mother might have been onto something. We may think we know what we want to make us happy, but are we truly qualified to know what our wants will bring us? Go with me on this. A scenario where the stakes are the difference between a good life and a hard one. Seems easy, right? But it's not. Essentially, when you boil it down to the essentials, which is your happiness. In this scenario, you find it hard to be happy. You feel disconnected from other people. You feel alone. Your spirits are low, and it's difficult to derive much pleasure from anything, even the things that you like. And then suddenly something appears. I don't know, a genie or an angel, whatever your faith structure will allow you to be playful with. And this thing says to you, I got you. I'll give you anything you want. In fact, I'll give you everything a person could ever want. And suddenly, almost overnight, you've got it. You're rich, way beyond what you thought you could ever be. You're supremely talented. Whereas before you felt invisible, but now millions of strangers around the world adore you. You get to travel to them around the world with your friends. You're making a great living following your passions. But things at home are coming together too. You get married, you start a family, you're objectively attractive. People desire you. In short, you have it all. You're living the dream. But here's the catch in your scenario. It doesn't work. Those things don't make you happier. In fact, they might make things worse. So you want all this, you get all this, and it's not working. What do you do now? What do you look forward to? How would the very idea of happiness even appear to you after all that? I think about these words probably more than I should, but I think about them. I'm not like them, but I can pretend. The sun is gone, but I have light. The day is done, but I'm having fun. I think I'm dumb. Or maybe I'm just happy. Kurt Cobain, wrote that for the Nirvana album In Utero, and he was neither dumb nor happy. But the song isn't a straight up satire of everyday people the way a lot of the songs on Nevermind are, where the jocks like to sing along, maybe not realizing that Kurt is targeting them. Dumb, different vibe, a sense of genuine bewilderment. What to do when you have it all, but it doesn't make you feel better. You can pretend, but for how long? In this case, the answer may be only a handful of years. April 8th, 1994. Let's go back 30 years ago. Atlanta Braves pitcher Kent Mercker no-hit the Dodgers. Do you know what the number one song in the United States was? Bump and Grind by R. Kelly. It's also the day that we all learned the news that would change everything forever. Kurt Cobain was gone, found in his Seattle home, dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was only 27 years old. The forensics would tell us he died on the 5th, but this is the day we found out, and it's the week that we all sunk to the bottom of that pool. And it was more than just a celebrity death and our morbid fascination with living fast and dying young. You see how we all consume so much true crime stuff. This part of the world is just draws us in all the time. And do you remember how some newscasters and commentators covered it? They passed it off in the glibest of ways with disdain for another rock star's sad ending. But it's because I don't think they were equipped for this. I know, I worked with a lot of them. Kurt was way more than a celebrity and way more than a rock star. Let me put it to you in this context. The boomers had John Lennon and Elvis Presley, and whereas Lennon was taken from them, assassinated, and Elvis was an accident of sorts, Kurt handed it all back. He was gifted, profoundly talented. Kurt Cobain was generationally talented, but he handed it back. Why? And his death, as you know, has turned into a spiral of mystery and conspiracy and salacious allegations. But the mystery to me, the one that matters, is why? Why would he do it? Billy Corrigan, supremely talented, also very smart, said that Once Kurt killed himself, our generation has been lost trying to find anyone willing to be a point person. Willing. And it wasn't just his talent for songwriting and rock stardom that made Kurt the point person. There were a lot of other reasons. I think a big one was empathy, his ability to connect to us at our lowest, our pains, our struggles, not just his. This is going to get me in trouble, but I don't care. I'll say it anyway. We live in a world today where so many celebrities are basically all avatars of success, and songs are just background scores for Instagram or TikTok filters applied to a life experience. And the artists themselves seem to have replaced the genuine human condition with an almost sociopathic commitment to looking like the high priests and priestesses of winning. You can envy them, but you're never getting that close. Unless, of course, you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you pray for an hour, you hit the gym for 5 hours, you listen to The Art of War on audiobook while getting a BBL, then you pray again, then you do an ultra marathon in a private jet before a day of charging your fans $50 for a happy birthday video on an app. Kurt wasn't like that. He would hate that. Don't get it flipped. Kurt's talent was pretty much unachievable for most, but somehow you could still relate to him. He'd never make you feel like you couldn't. Kurt was famous for lots of reasons, and one of them was for being like us, not for being better or more accomplished than us. But that's why on a day like today, when 30 years ago the tabloid machine cranked up and the media coverage was everywhere, it does Kurt a grave disservice to remember him as a star on a pedestal. Henry Rollins, also brilliant, said something really insightful about Kurt Cobain. He said, I think maybe in a situation where all these people want a piece of you to be in these weird situations may drive one to extremes. A lot of people, they're brilliant and they're very sensitive. And perhaps they're not prepared for and I love this, they're not prepared for the brutality of mass acceptance. And Rollins uses a word that unlocks a lot of doors: sensitivity. Dr. Gabor Mate is a world-leading authority and pioneer in the field of trauma research. And I asked him once about artists and suffering and why do so many seem to go through so much pain. Here's what he said.
Many artists have suffered greatly. Many musicians have been traumatized. Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse. These were all very traumatized and extraordinary creative people. But it's not the trauma that created the creativity. The two are often associated, but not because the trauma creates the creativity. I believe it's because of something else. Who becomes creative? People who are extraordinarily sensitive. Sensitivity means, from the Latin word sensere, to feel. The more sensitive you are, the more you feel. That means when bad things happen, you feel them even more. Same sensitive people, because they're so sensitive, they get hurt so badly, but because of their sensitivity, right, they're also right, the creative ones.
Sensitivity, to feel deeply, to know just how far down this life goes. Sensitivity doesn't make you an artist, but it really is the jet fuel for some truly great work. And then there's Kurt's voice, that paradoxical quality in his voice, angelic but possessed, hopeless and hopeful. You know, maybe even more than the songs themselves, which were incredible. But Kurt's voice made all the difference in our lives. And Henry Rollins brought up a second point. It wasn't just Kurt's innate sensitivity that caused so much grief. It was also that raw emotion trapped in a world of fame. In 3 short years, Kurt had gone from punk rock kid with dreams and focus to superstar, and then ultimately gone. Nevermind is one of the most important records ever. It's up there with Sgt. Pepper's or Dark Side or Nevermind the Bollocks or Low End Theory. Nevermind was the catalyst for an entire cultural movement, a success that Kurt wanted, but when he got it, he clearly hated it. And his final note was filled with a sense that he had sold out somehow, betrayed his own values, lost something pure. Now, you know, and we have the tools today to know that that's the language of self-loathing. But there's no doubt that for someone in so much pain, the constant scrutiny was not a good thing. There were all kinds of signs leading up to the end: hospitalizations, overdose, erratic behavior. He was lost in a prison. And that's when things can turn their darkest, when you can't see a way for them to get better. Depression is a constant reminder that you're somewhere you don't want to be. And the sad irony of these final days is that for someone so attuned to the bullshit of our cultural mythologies, he sounded like he was trapped in one himself. Better to burn out than fade away. Which isn't true. But Kurt didn't live long enough to find that out himself. You ever heard of the double hook? A great Canadian novel by Sheila Watson, The Double Hook, starts with this epigram: when you hook twice the glory, you hook twice the fear. And for someone as sensitive as Kurt, who had hooked twice the glory, it was too much. His gifts hurt him, even as they healed us. You know, those songs gave you a place where you could let your guards down. Your fears and confusions were seen, but they weren't judged. But more importantly, they seemed to be understood. But Kurt seemed like a fellow who didn't have that for himself. And you know, you may recall right after his death, so many artists talked about how they wish they could have connected with him. Leonard Cohen, Eddie Vedder, Michael Stipe, Neil Young, they all wish they could have been a safe space for him. What would you do if you were given everything and you still weren't happy? And to go back to the beginning, what if it made all the things worse? It's a solar eclipse today, which is somehow appropriate because the sun, as you know, is a star after all. And we lost the center of our musical solar system. 30 years ago, we found out the news that even the sun can be blocked. And maybe what we get from losing Kurt Cobain is a reminder that nothing beats happiness. And happiness doesn't come from what you have. It's about the process and feeling like the process is worth it. The process and the purpose found in the happiness that we create in others. Another tragic irony. Kurt's music, which was so brutal and raw and unflinchingly honest and self-lacerating and angry and bitter, was also so tender and so filled with love and gave us so much joy. Kids still wear his face on t-shirts today, and that brings a smile to my face. If only he could have seen it and felt that, and maybe kept a little for himself in those moments. And maybe today, when we're looking back on the 30th anniversary of April 8th, somebody in Atlanta would say, oh, it's the anniversary of when Kent Mercker no-hit the Dodgers. Nothing really else to say about that day. Could have been different. Should have been different. And when the day is done, the sun is gone. But tomorrow, maybe we can just be a little dumb. Or maybe just happy.